What is your magic number when it comes to retirement? For Americans, they're saying $1.26 million in a retirement account would leave them comfortable when it comes to retirement. Now, this is down from $200,000 from last year, which is kind of crazy, but this is still well above what people are saving for those golden years, meaning there is a big deficiency, which we're going to be talking about in today's video. According to the study from Northwestern Mutual, Americans' temptation and really temper the views when it comes to retirement, easing it, and because of inflation is the biggest culprit. 1.26 was on par with the 2022 expectations, which means over the last 3 years, it has come down significantly. This, again, inflation is really the driving thing. Inflation is down, and people's idea of what they need for retirement has also come down. So it's interesting to see that the psychological effect that we kind of associate with consumer price index, where things are a lot more expensive, inflation going up to 8%, now coming down to 2%, people don't think they need as much money to live. Everyone's retirement goal can vary greatly when it comes to an individual basis, depending on a lot of things, including circumstances, bills that you do have, where you live, what kind of lifestyle you want in retirement. Are you going to stay as a hermit within a single family home? Are you going to travel luxuriously 2 to 3 times a year? People should generally save 80% of their income, their pre-retirement income, for the retirement years. So when we think about this mathematically, if you're an individual making $100,000 a year, you're saving 80% of that income. That means you have to survive when you get to retirement on $80,000 a year. Think about that for a minute. $80,000 a year. What kind of retirement do you have? I know there's going to be growth, and I know there's going to be a supplement to Social Security, but 80% of the income. Try it today. If you really want to test drive this and see what it could feel like, go ahead and take 20% of your salary, put it into a high yield savings account, put it into a savings account, see what it feels like living on the rest of your salary, or 80% of that. If you're living below your means like I am, on roughly 70% of my income, it's going to be incredibly easy. I'm not going to feel the difference. If you're an individual that's at 100, 110, 120% of your monthly income, guess what? You're going to be another 20% short, meaning you're going to have to borrow a lot more money, which is where this giant gap is coming through. Between savings, between investments, the goal is getting wider and wider and wider. Only 9% of Americans have 10 times their annual salary for retirement, which is what the study found, again, from Northwestern Mutual. Average US household income of $80,000. Americans need about 15 times their annual income to reach this magical number when they get to retirement. So think about that for a minute. We have roughly about 9% of Americans have 10 times their annual salary, but Americans need 15 times their annual salary just to get to that magic number, what they think. So again, when you think about this, it is a very significant gap. And when we break down some of these statistics, it's incredible. So over half of Americans, 51% of Americans, think it's somewhat or very likely that they'll outlive their savings. This means when you get to retirement, you're going to die before, you're going to die after all of your retirement funds have been completely exhausted. It could be a year, it could be 2, it could be 10. Chances are the retirement funds for 51% of Americans are going to be completely exhausted before they pass away. 35% said they have taken 0 steps to address the possibility of not having enough retirement funds and living just primarily on Social Security if anything with Social Security does not change. And only 16% of Americans feel confident enough to say their money should very unlikely not run out by the time. So they're saying, by the time I die, I should still have a little bit of money left, which was only 16% of Americans. That leaves the other 84% of Americans that think the chances are they're going to run out of funds long before anything should happen to them, meaning they're going to live on just Social Security. Now, 1 in 4 Americans have enough retirement savings for 1 year or less. Think about that for a minute. 25% of Americans say they have less than 1 year of the current income saved for retirement. If you have worked your entire life, if you're looking at 20, 30, 40 years, that you've been working years, and you don't even have 1 year of salary saved, you're going to have to make some really big life adjustments. Going to have to look at making some really, honestly, really big. And for a majority of people kind of in this bucket, what I've seen is that they start usually about 30, 40, 45. When you start getting to that age, you're talking, you have 20 years, possibly even 30, 35 years that you have missed out in putting money away in retirement plans. getting the employer match, making contributions, looking at the compounding interest that you could get in there. That is the reason why, again, a lot of people are starting to fall behind, and financial anxiety as at epidemic levels, which is kind of crazy. Looking at everything in the market only extrapolates that. They start losing money. They start pulling out the money as fast as possible. Now, the study comes the nation is living longer than we ever have before. More than 10,000 people are turning 65 every day through 2027. Think about that for a moment. 10,000 people every day are turning 65 that are going to be eligible for Social Security at 65. For a lot of people, depending on age, could be 66, 67, could be possibly even a little bit longer, depending on when you were born. The demographic bubble known as the peak 65 as a part of retirement planning, that is the number they've used. Now, one thing to note is when it comes to retirement planning, healthcare expenses continue to rise. So when you start thinking of that aspect of Social Security, what is the supplement going to be? What are you going to be able to afford? 65-year-old retiring in 2024 could expect to spend on average $165,000 on healthcare and medical expenses during the retirement years, according to Fidelity. Again, that is incredible. If you're 65 and you're going to live, let's say, to 85, so you got 20 years, $165,000 for healthcare and medical expenses during retirement. The numbers are staggering. Overall, working age Americans say they started saving roughly at about 33, plan to retire at 65. So again, if you're starting at 33, you've already lost a decade, if not more, when it comes to those working years. Younger generation is starting to save sooner. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this is going to be the turning point. Planning to retire early and expecting to live a lot longer. So you have the trifecta within the younger generation, which is kind of crazy. So they're saving sooner, they'll retire sooner, which means they're not going to be eligible for Social Security and Social Security benefits, planning to retire early and then expecting to live a lot longer, meaning the money that they're saving sooner is going to have to last them a lot longer if the longevity is there, that they're lasting or living a lot longer that we've seen. So for example, and this is what Northwestern Mutual uses, Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, started saving at 24, aiming to retire at 61. So again, if they're retiring at 61, even in the future, they are not going to be eligible for healthcare at that point, meaning they're going to have to bridge the gap from 61 to 65 if everything stays status quo as it is. Then a third of them think they'll likely live to 100 years of age. Again, if you're retiring at 61 and you're living to 100, you have 39 years of expenses. That is incredible when you think of the gap between those. Generation X is starting to approach the retirement really unprepared. When you look at the rule of thumb of having that general, not the 1.24 million in there, they are well below the expectation. It's time to get Gen Z and some of them moving as the retirement is coming up in a multitude of years. Just 6% of Gen X has 10x their annual savings. A total of 48% of Gen X plan to work during all of their retirement years, compared with 40% of all Americans. So they are up 8% and willing to work during retirement. I don't know about you and I, but I do want to retire. And when I'm retired, I do not want to have to go back to work, especially if it is just because of the financial burden that we do have. So overall, guys, the magical number coming down another $200,000, looking at 1.24 million. So let me know in the comments exactly where you're at with that magic number. For me, we're right around exactly where that number needs to be. Definitely on par with the next years that we're going to be working to stockpile and turn the magic number into a couple of $1 million number. So guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.